Hello, everyone. Today we'll be discussing our topic, which is incorporating two-eyed seeing in Aboriginal aged care. This consists of me, Iman, and if my other group mates would like to introduce themselves.
Hey, I'm Roman.
Hey, I'm Tanjin.
Hey, I'm Demi.
Yeah, and I'm Aiden.
All right, so today we'll be exploring how blending Indigenous knowledge with Western approaches can significantly enhance the care and well-being of Aboriginal elders. So let's dive in. Here are the topics that we'll be discussing for today. If you want to take a look. All right, so Aboriginal spirituality is deeply rooted in connections to the land, family, and community, shaping an approach to health and well-being. For many Aboriginal Indigenous elders, this connection is critical for their mental, emotional, and physical health. Holistic care must acknowledge these spiritual ties to ensure that aged care respects their cultural identity, as many Aboriginal people feel a strong sense of belonging to the land, the sea, and their communities, which affects their physical and mental well-being. So here's an overview of aged care in Indigenous, Aboriginal/Indigenous communities. Aboriginal elders face unique challenges in aged care. While 15% of Aboriginal Australians are aged 50 or older, less than 1% live in residential aged care facilities. Systemic issues such as a lack of culturally appropriate care and resources contribute to this disparity. Addressing these gaps is critical for supporting the dignity and well-being of Aboriginal and Indigenous elders. So to give a quick definition of what two-eyed seeing is, just to be aware, two-eyed seeing is about blending the strengths of Indigenous and Western knowledge systems. It's a framework that respects Indigenous perspectives while leveraging modern scientific advancements. In aged care, this means honoring spiritual traditions alongside biomedical practices, improving both cultural safety and care quality. This approach ensures that aged care goes beyond treating physical ailments by incorporating spiritual practices such as connecting elders to their culture and family. Care becomes holistic. Facilities adopting two-eyed seeing might include traditional ceremonies or culturally relevant activities, fostering a sense of belonging. A practical example of this integration is involving, I'll try my best to pronounce this correctly, Ningangaris. Or traditional healers alongside Western healthcare providers. This dual approach respects spiritual traditions while addressing physical health, creating personalized and holistic care plans that truly serve the needs of Indigenous elders.
All right, so moving forward, I'll be talking about some of the triumphs highlighted in the article's research. So these practices show how cultural and spiritual needs can be effectively supported in Aboriginal aged care. So one of the key practices is the use of smoking or smudging ceremonies, and these ceremonies are deeply significant in Aboriginal culture, helping cleansing negative energy and maintain spiritual balance. So, for instance, Alice, a carer, explained how these ceremonies are performed when a resident passes away, ensuring the spirits are at peace. And they even cleanse every corner of the facility to honor these beliefs, involving family and friends in the process. Family involvement is another critical success. So Aya, a resident from the article, shared how supported she felt in a facility that actively included her family in her care. And this highlights how involving family members respect the strong kinship ties central to Aboriginal culture. And it really helps elders feel connected to their loved ones. And finally, the study shows how carers, particularly those with Aboriginal backgrounds, play a vital role in maintaining cultural practices, as Alex pointed out. Understanding spiritual beliefs and prioritizing family connections are really integral to their approach. And these practices aren't just about care, they're about creating an environment where cultural and spiritual values are respected and celebrated, and ultimately enriching their lives of Aboriginal elders and residential care. Next slide, please. All right, now let's discuss the importance of these Aboriginal carers in these places. So, Indigenous carers bring unique contributions to aged care. They possess an intuitive understanding of the spiritual and cultural needs of the elders. And this natural connection allows them to provide person centered care and foster a culturally safe environment where elders feel respected and understood. In contrast, testimonials from non Indigenous carers reveal gaps in knowledge about spirituality and cultural practices. And while they express a willingness to help, they often lack the training to address the needs of the residents effectively. And this really highlights the significant disparity in how care is delivered and also underscores the importance of like proper training for all staff. But yeah, so to bridge this gap, increasing Indigenous staffing is essential. Next slide, please. Finally, let's talk about the role of meaningful activities in building connections for these elders, as emphasized in the article. So, storytelling is one of them, and it stands out as a powerful tool for strengthening cultural identity, sharing ancestral stories, allowing elders to connect with their heritage, fostering emotional well being, and a sense of belonging. Art therapy is another key activity. Engaging in traditional art forms like painting and weaving provides a creative outlet for elders, and these activities promote self expression and a sense of purpose while connecting participants to their cultural roots. And lastly, the integration of bush medicine offers significant benefits by combining traditional healing practices with Western medicine. Aged care providers can deliver a more holistic approach to health, and this respects the elder traditional knowledge and promotes well being in a way that acknowledges their cultural values. Uh,
Non-Indigenous carers often lack understanding of Aboriginal spirituality, which is vital to culturally appropriate care. This knowledge gap leads to inadequate spiritual care, negatively impacting the emotional, mental, and overall health of residents. The resulting cultural disconnect marginalizes Aboriginal residents and disregards their spiritual needs within aged care settings. Financial and resource constraints significantly hindered the delivery of culturally appropriate care. Insufficient funding restricts spiritual activities, limiting Aboriginal elders' ability to connect with their culture. Additionally, staffing shortages worsen the issue, with the lack of Aboriginal carers compromising the provision of culturally informed care. High staff turnover only worsens this challenge by disrupting continuity, making it harder to build trust and cultural understanding between carers and the residents. The Western centric framework of aged care systems often fails to accommodate Aboriginal spiritual needs. This oversight isolates residents from their cultural and community, um, leaving them feeling alienated. Without culturally relevant practices, the well being of Aboriginal elders is further diminished. Adding to this are communication barriers where differences in language and cultural understanding between staff and the residents negatively impact care quality. As one resident, David, expressed, I don't count myself as white. This is my culture. This illustrates the deep disconnect many residents feel in these environments. The language barriers between Aboriginal residents and non-Indigenous carers often leads to a breakdown in assessing and addressing spiritual needs. Cultural misunderstandings further compound this as differing perspectives on spirituality health uh, and health result in care that feels inadequate or inappropriate to Aboriginal elders. This breakdown leaves many residents feeling isolated and marginalized. As Steve, a resident, explained, it is sacred. My mother and father taught me the culture, emphasizing the need for carers to approach these aspects with respect and understanding.
Next, we need to focus on individualized care. Holistic care plans address physical, mental, and spiritual needs, ensuring that every aspect of well being is covered. This isn't a one size fits all approach. It's about tailoring plans to each elder's unique preferences, guided by the principles of two-eyed seeing. By integrating both Indigenous and Western perspectives, we create care that is comprehensive and meaningful. Next slide, please. So these are some of the concrete steps we could take, including launching pilot projects, training all staff in cultural competence to ensure they know what they're doing when treating people of indigenous cultures or origins. Next, we need to secure funding for these cultural practices, as without money, we cannot make these changes happen, as money runs the world right now. So funding should go towards hiring Aboriginal carers and running cultural activities and creating spaces where elders feel at home. She also partnered with existing Aboriginal communities, because we as people from Western culture are blind to these things, so we cannot figure it out alone, and we need help from people who know this stuff. Next slide, please. And to be sure of the effectiveness of these steps for holistic care we are taking, we need to get criteria for success, and we need to collect feedback in relation to these in such a way that we either get positive or negative feedback that tells us whether we're moving in the right direction or not. We need the people we are taking care of to have an active say in whether what we're doing is right or wrong. So we need to collect feedback from them. We need to hire even more Aboriginal carers. We also need more cultural activities in the care facilities. And we need to regularly test staff knowledge to make sure that they know what they're doing and they won't make mistakes, because some usually get complacent and forget what they have been taught. And we also need community engagement reports, which I believe is the most important part. Next slide.
Okay, so what are the key findings and main obstacles to summarize kind of the challenges? Well, the first one is that carers have knowledge gaps, right? Many non-Indigenous carers don't really understand the Aboriginal spirituality, which stops them from providing proper cultural care, and it also hurts the well-beings of many of the residents. Second, intentional or not, there is resident marginalization, right? For the few Aboriginal elderly in care, there's often a language barrier and lack of cultural practices, and this leads to them being marginalized as their culture needs are treated as insignificant to their health. Finally, the lack of resources. To put it simply, there just isn't enough funding or staffing and opportunities for these cultural practices and activities to really provide a great place to stay. So let's run down what we can do in the future and what this brighter future entails. With application of 2IC, we can enhance the culturally safe and holistic care, which should improve resident well-being and satisfaction. Of course, policy changes, having cross-cultural training for all staff, and funding these cultural resources and activities can help stop the marginalization and also create a better environment for these Indigenous elderlies. Finally, we have to utilize these policy changes, of course. So we should integrate elders and healers into care teams, which can help with collaboration with other parties and communities, and also help with cultural practices. Now, to summarize everything, just really quickly, it's to integrate spiritual care, we need culturally safe practices, robust staff training, and increased funding. We need this because non-Indigenous carers right now often face knowledge gaps, encounter communication and language barriers, and work within resource limitations. And to facilitate this integration process, we should prioritize policy changes, train the carers to be culturally safe, and of course, increase Indigenous staffing. Well, that's pretty much it.
Thanks so much. So, Paul, your view: what are there senior centers or so-called aged care in Indigenous based in your community, Paul?
We have the health center takes care of that program and taking care of some of the elders. Most elders would like to stay in their house, if at all,
Right.
for as long as possible, and maybe that's right across the board for Canadians in general. But Aboriginal people really request, even if they are in a home, to come back to their home if they're getting near death. I did pick up on one thing where it was integration of the two-eyed seeing and Western science. I don't know if and maybe it's different in the health center, but I wouldn't say that I see integration of the two-eyed Western science and indigenous knowledge being integrated so that you could move along that particular path. One of the things that when they're living in the home too, they don't get access to fish, or at least in our Ojibwe territory, whitefish, and whitefish has a vitamin B12 in it, which helps the brain. And so I just put that out there.
Yeah.
And history and smoking it's not the smoking itself; it's the smoking of a traditional pipe. See, a lot of Aboriginals smoke cigarettes, but that's the smoking part is more associated with a pipe ceremony and smudging, and those are all spirit carriers up to the when you're talking to the Great Spirit.
Okay, thanks.
English. And very well done, thank you. People will be able to use this somewhere if you run across a reserve that's looking and drop it off at the health center somewhere. They'd be most interested in it. Thank you.